As Alex gathered his belongings and got ready to take his daughters to school, he couldn't help but appreciate the beauty of the day. The sun was shining and there was a gentle breeze in the air. He felt grateful for this moment. As he loaded his daughters into the car, they chatted and laughed, excited for the day ahead. As he drove, Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and joy, seeing his daughters growing up into beautiful young ladies. As they arrived at the school, Alex said his goodbyes to them and watched them walk through the gates. As a successful owner of a media holding worth hundreds of millions of dollars, he had achieved a level of success that many could only dream of. He had worked tirelessly over the years to build his business from the ground up, overcoming countless challenges and obstacles along the way. Now, his media empire was one of the most respected in the industry, with a reputation for quality and excellence that was unrivaled. Despite his success, however, he remained humble and dedicated to his work. Today was an important day for him because he was launching his foundation. He had worked for months to plan and organize the launch event and was looking forward to the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of those affected by cancer. To make the occasion even more special, he had flown his parents from their small town to attend the opening ceremony. Alex's upbringing was humble as he grew up in a small town in the northern states with a family that didn't have much. His father worked long hours as a mechanic at a truck shop to provide for his family, while his mom was a nurse at the local hospital. Alex had an older brother, Ben, who he used to fight with a lot when they were little kids. Despite being close in age, the two brothers had very different personalities. Alex was a grumpy and easily irritable kid who would often complain to his parents about how Ben didn't share his toys with him. In contrast, Ben was a more easygoing child who enjoyed playing with his younger brother and didn't think much of the occasional argument. Unfortunately, their parents would often believe Alex's complaints and reprimand Ben, even though the accusations were often unfounded. Alex's success in school was not just limited to his personal life. In fact, he excelled academically, particularly in subjects like math and languages. He had a natural talent for understanding complex concepts and theories, and he was able to grasp new ideas and information quickly. Ben, Alex's older brother, was a different story when it came to academics. Unlike Alex, Ben didn't do as well in school and had trouble with his grades. However, he had a passion for sports and was an exceptional athlete. In junior high, he played both basketball and baseball and was known for his skills on the field. Despite his love for sports, Ben struggled to balance his extracurricular activities with his studies, and his grades suffered as a result. At the age of 7, Ben suffered from a severe infection that his parents tried to treat for 2 weeks with various types of medication. After multiple failed attempts, the doctors decided to prescribe strong antibiotics, which eventually helped him to recover. However, as time went on, Ben's parents began to notice that he was not responding to their calls and became concerned. It was later discovered that the antibiotics had caused his hearing to become impaired. When the parents were at work, Ben was responsible for taking care of his younger brother and looking after the household chores. The family had a small garden where they grew apples and vegetables. Ben was always eager to help tend to the garden, and he enjoyed spending time outdoors. On a beautiful spring day, the entire family was working together in their small garden. Ben was digging a hole for a new apple tree while his mother tended to the vegetable patch nearby. Suddenly, Ben's mother, Jenny, realized she needed a bucket of water and called out to him to fetch it for her. Jenny tried to call him by shouting his name, but he didn't hear her because of his hearing impairment. Alex threw a rock to try to get Ben's attention, but it missed him. When Ben's mother called out his name again with no response, she got angry and quickly walked over to him to ask if he could hear her. Ben was scared and confused by the situation. He didn't understand why his mother was so angry. Ben's mother continued asking him why he wasn't responding and why she had to keep calling him so loudly. She was becoming hoarse from shouting, which added to her growing frustration. Initially, Ben's family tried to adjust to his hearing impairment, but as time went on, his mother became increasingly frustrated when he couldn't hear her. She started shouting and getting angry, which made it difficult for Ben to communicate as he was afraid he would miss something. Whenever Alex and Ben had a disagreement or argument, Alex would mock and insult Ben using hurtful language and making fun of his hearing impairment, knowing that Ben had difficulty hearing him. But ironically, often Ben didn't even hear those insults. Because of the constant worry that he might not hear when his mother or other people called for him, Ben began bedwetting. With Ben's bedwetting, Alex now had another way to make fun of his brother whenever he didn't get his way. At school, Ben became the target of ridicule from his peers. Some teachers were understanding of Ben's hearing impairment, but others were not equipped to handle it and asked his parents to take action to address the issue. One day while Alex was eating his lunch at home, he accidentally spilled his soup on the floor. When Ben came over and asked Alex to clean up the spill, Alex refused and ran away. Ben chased after Alex and pulled him back by his ear. This made Alex cry loudly and he fell to the floor. Alex then got up and approached his brother quietly from behind. He said mean things to Ben, like how he wets the bed and can't hear anything, in a way that only made Ben feel worse. In the end, Ben took care of wiping the spilled soap on the floor on his own. The family struggled, and Alex would often want something from the store which the family could not afford. One day as they were getting groceries, Alex saw a fire truck toy which he really wanted. "We can't afford it, Alex. You can play with your wooden toys," Jenny said. Alex cried hysterically, pulling on his mother's sleeve. His mother wasn't having a good day. She jerked him back and said, "I told you we're not getting the truck." Ben was quietly putting groceries on the counter and watching them. A few days later, Ben left the school early. He skipped math as it was really boring. Besides, nobody cared if he did well in that class. Teachers practically gave up on him. After he left the school premises, he went around and asked the neighbors if they had any work to be done. When he knocked on the third door, an old lady, Mrs. Bennett, opened the door. Ben asked if he could do some chores for money. Mrs. Bennett was really happy. She had bags of unused soil sitting in her backyard that she needed to carry out. Ben quickly got to work. By the time he finished carrying the heavy bags out of the backyard, it quickly got dark. Mrs. Bennett gave him a wad of cash and Ben quickly rushed to the store before it closed. He stuffed the shiny red fire truck carefully in his backpack and ran home. When he came home, Jenny was furious. She asked him where he had been so late and began scolding him. Ben explained that he had an important assignment at school. "What homework did you even do, dummy?" Mother asked Ben. "And why are you all dirty? Were you hanging out with Josh again?" The reason Jenny was angry all the time was because of her husband. Their marriage didn't start off well. When they were young, Lance was a really romantic young man. He courted Jenny really well. She dreamed of moving to the city and Lance tried hard to make it happen, but at that moment, they couldn't afford it. Jenny came from a rich family and was used to having all the good things. Lance, on the other hand, was from a working class family. They got married despite Jenny's parents' disapproval. When they had Ben, Jenny wasn't really happy about her son either. They were barely making ends meet. Jenny constantly compared her rich family to Lance's poor parents. That's why Lance didn't want anything to do with Jenny's family. He told her one day he will make her dreams come true. Unfortunately, that day was too far ahead. Ben was standing in front of his parents. His clothes were dirty from all the mud from carrying the bags. Jenny was screaming at him and he was just standing there smiling. "How dare you stand there and smile? Go wash yourself up now." Ben was smiling and happy because he knew he had something in his backpack that he bought for his little brother Alex. Alex was just standing there laughing at how Ben was getting scolded. He was still a kid, and perhaps he didn't understand many things yet. And you know how kids are. When everything was over, Ben asked Alex to come to the bathroom. He carefully got the shiny red fire truck out of his backpack. Alex could not contain his joy. He was so happy that he started jumping around and accidentally knocked over the metal bucket on the bathtub. Mom heard the commotion and came rushing to the bathroom. When she saw the fire truck, she got really angry. Both boys held their heads low. "Where did you get the truck?" Jenny asked Ben. Ben didn't say anything. "I'm talking to you, Ben. Where did you get the truck?" After another moment of silence, she probably guessed. "Oh no. Did you steal it from the store? You're just like your father." "Where did you get the truck?" I said. Ben smiled a little bit. He didn't know what to say. He didn't want his mother to know that he had skipped class to get it, so he just stood there with his head low and hoping Mom would forget about it. Jenny, thinking Ben must have stolen the truck, went back to the store. Ben was walking behind her. When they got there, Ben was already contemplating some butt whooping that would probably ensue. "I am really sorry, sir. Is this your toy? I told my boys we couldn't afford it. They must have stolen it." "Not really. Your son paid for that truck," the cashier replied. "He did?" "Oh yeah." They went out and Jenny asked Ben where he got the money. Ben finally told her about the bags of soil that he got paid for taking out. When she heard it, she was surprised, and they just walked home quietly. Years passed and the family still struggled. Jenny still constantly complained to her husband about their small house, about their old car, about the things she could have had but still didn't. Meanwhile, Ben was a sophomore in high school. His grades were pretty bad, but his teachers already pretty much gave up on him. But he was doing well in sports. He loved sports. Alex, on the other hand, was winning math competitions. He was a promising student. He was 3 years younger than Ben, and they often had fun doing math calculations together. Ben would give Alex simple arithmetic problems which he couldn't solve himself, and Alex would quickly give him right answers. Ben was really proud of his brother. He also loved his brother very much. Most of Alex's friends had bikes and he really wanted one too. Ben saw Alex looking at his friends' bikes when they rode past them after school. One day, Ben traded his baseball gloves for a day of riding his friend's bike. When he showed up in front of Alex on a bike, Alex was elated. Ben spent the whole day pushing Alex from behind and teaching him how to ride a bike. At the end of his sophomore year, Ben started to feel bad suddenly. His hearing was getting worse. He also rapidly started losing weight, and in a matter of weeks, he couldn't walk much. He would get tired and just wanted to lay down. The parents had no idea what was going on. Blood tests came back positive for leukemia. They started the treatment too late. Ben ended up in bed. Soon, he couldn't get up and walk on his own. Jenny or Lance took turns taking days off from work to take care of Ben at home. He got too weak to even chew his own meals. Jenny fed him with soft meals and porridges. Lance carried him to the bathroom when he needed to go. Lance worked hard to provide for the family. He got a second job to cover the treatment. He would spend the night sitting in the dark kitchen and quietly sobbing, while Jenny sat next to her son. After 6 months, Ben started losing his eyesight. Alex was turning 12 at the time. At first, he didn't really give it much attention, but over time, the weight of the graveness of the whole situation started to sink in. With every new day, Alex was becoming more and more quiet, as he understood that Ben was seriously ill. He would spend long hours sitting next to his brother and asking him to play math games with him. Ben just lay motionless, breathing heavily and looking into space. He would slowly turn his head towards where the sounds were coming from and try to squeeze out a word, but it was incomprehensible for Alex. It was early morning. For the first time in his life, Alex cried because he felt so sorry for his brother. He woke up and didn't feel like going to school, even though he had an important preparation for a math competition with his teacher. He sat on the edge of his brother's bed and held his hand. He cried quietly and tears fell on his brother's hands. He looked at Ben laying on the bed, with his eyes open and looking in the distance. He remembered how Ben got him the red fire truck, how he would push him on other kids' bikes hours on end, trying to teach him how to ride. "I love you, brother. Ben, do you hear me? I love you. Please get up. Come on, man. Get up now," I said. "You said you were going to take me to the lake. You lied to me, Ben. At least play the math game with me, Ben. Please, ask me your questions." Alex remembered how as a kid he made fun of his brother and laughed at him when Ben couldn't hear something, how he pinched his nose whenever Ben woke up wet. He hated himself for that. "Ben, I'm sorry. Do you hear me? I said I'm sorry, brother. I'm gonna take you to the lake, alright? We'll get on a boat and we'll have lots of fun together. Do you hear me, Ben? Say something, please." At that moment, Ben suddenly turned his head slightly and looked at Alex. His lips moved weakly, turning into a smile. He slowly started lifting his arm, beckoning him to come closer. Alex got excited and he shouted, "Mom, Dad, Ben is looking straight at me, come quick!" Jenny and Lance came rushing in. They were smiling as Ben looked at them too. As they all sat there, Ben beckoned them to come closer. He wanted to say something, but it was extremely hard for him to push the air out of his lungs to say it. He whispered weakly. "Yes, baby, what is it?" Jenny asked. "Alex. Promise me you will take Alex to a good university. Promise me. He's smart. He's so much smarter than me. He has a good future." Tears rolled down Jenny's cheeks. Lance held Ben's hand and wept softly. Jenny held Ben's head and kissed him on his forehead. She repeated how much she loved him and asked to forgive him for everything she had done. That evening, Ben passed away. Everyone was devastated. Alex screamed and cried for 3 days. For several days after the funeral, Jenny and Lance didn't speak much to one another. They were just quietly grieving. A month after Ben passed away, Jenny was in his room folding his clothes. Alex walked in and asked his mom if he could keep his brother's clothes and wear them. It became quiet in the household. Alex had no one to goof around with anymore. His best friend, his brother, was gone. Alex became even more quiet. From that day on, he committed to studying really hard to fulfill his brother's wishes. When Alex graduated from high school and it was time for college, Lance sold everything he could to pay for Alex's studies. 4 years later, Alex graduated from a prestigious business school and started his media production company, which would later grow into a giant media holding. While working in the media industry, he met his future wife, Griselda. She was a beautiful Latin American girl who was kind and caring, exactly what Alex was looking for in his future wife. They got married and had 3 beautiful daughters. As he dropped his 2 beautiful daughters to school, he asked his driver to pick up his parents from the airport. The opening ceremony of the Ben Arnold's Cancer Treatment Foundation was a big event for the city. After all the formalities were done, Alex delivered a speech in which he said that Ben Arnold's was a man with an immense and pure heart. Thanks to him, he became what he is today and is now standing here. Alex told the crowd that his brother taught him how to love and be kind no matter what. Lance and Jenny Arnold's sat holding hands in the front row. They were quietly crying. Alex's wife Griselda was sitting with her daughters next to their grandparents. She was smiling and so happy to be Alex's wife. In the evening, the whole family had dinner at home and remembered Ben. To this day, Alex sees dreams where his brother Ben is bringing him sweets and carrying him on his back. He misses his big brother and knows that love and kindness are the most important things. Unfortunately, sometimes people understand that only having lost their loved ones.
The wet mop hit the floor with a soft thud and swished across the smooth, polished surface of the corridor. The office's dim lighting cast long, wavering shadows in the early hours, creating a serene, almost surreal atmosphere. Lily, her hair neatly tied in a ponytail, was dressed in her crisp, blue uniform, diligently mopping the floors. She moved rhythmically, lost in the world of her earphones where upbeat music played, infusing her with energy and keeping her spirits high. She had arrived at work at 5 a.m. this morning, starting her day with a burst of productivity. By now, she had already finished dusting the tables in the various office rooms, methodically wiping away every speck of dust from their polished surfaces. Finishing the office spaces early brought Lily a sense of relief. It meant she could avoid the usual hustle and bustle of the day, and more importantly, escape the uncomfortable gazes of the workers that often lingered a bit too long. As she moved the wet mop across the glossy floor, Lily noticed a flicker of light from behind. Her heart skipped a beat as she quickly took off her earphones and turned around, her eyes scanning the dimly lit corridor. "Good morning, kiddo," a hoarse voice echoed through the hallway, breaking the silence. Lily's tense shoulders relaxed as soon as she recognized the voice. It was Mr. Holland, the elderly security guard, standing by the doorway with his usual stoic expression. "Do you even sleep, Lily? Seems like you're always here, bright and early," Mr. Holland remarked, a hint of concern in his gravelly voice. Lily smiled warmly and straightened up, pausing her mopping. She wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead and replied, "Good morning, Mr. Holland. Oh, I get plenty of sleep. I just prefer to get things done before the office gets busy, you know? It's easier to work without everyone around. I hope I didn't wake you, sir. I'm sorry if I did." Mr. Holland shook his head, a faint smile on his weathered face. "Not at all, Lily. I couldn't sleep anyway. Comes with age. You'll understand someday." Mr. Holland kept his hands casually tucked in his pockets, his gaze following Lily as she meticulously worked the floor. The rhythmic sound of the mop provided a soft background to the otherwise quiet hallway. "You remind me of my Susan. She was an early bird, too. By the time I'd drag myself out of bed, breakfast was always on the table, and the house, it was spotless," Mr. Holland reminisced, his voice trailing off as he got lost in his memories. Lily paused her mopping, leaning on the mop handle as she turned to face Mr. Holland. Her expression softened with sympathy. She had heard stories about Susan and knew how much Mr. Holland missed his wife. It had been a tough year for him since his wife succumbed to a severe bout of pneumonia. They had shared more than 45 years together, a lifetime of memories and love. Lily offered a playful smile. "Seems like someone skipped breakfast this morning. Let me just finish up here, and we can share the tuna sandwiches I brought." At the mention of tuna sandwiches, Mr. Holland's eyes immediately lit up. He hadn't eaten since last night. His appetite often waned in the quiet solitude of his home. He knew he was in for a treat. Lily always seemed to have something delicious with her. Mr. Holland admired her for many things, not least her thoughtful organization. Soon, they were sitting side by side on the freshly cleaned floor, warming their hands on cups of tea poured from Lily's thermos. As they enjoyed the sandwiches, Mr. Holland began to recount one of his many stories from his days in the Marines. Lily always looked forward to hearing Mr. Holland's stories. They were not just captivating tales filled with adventure and life lessons, but she knew they also brought him comfort, easing the loneliness that often clouded his days. As for Mr. Holland, sharing these stories made him feel valued and alive. In fact, it was one of these very stories that had originally drawn Lily to this job. Lily had been working at this mid-sized IT company for 3 months now, her role seemingly simple as a cleaning lady, but she carried it out with pride and diligence. Her journey to this point had been marked by a poignant past. Growing up in a small town, Lily's life took a tragic turn when she was just 14. Her parents and her little sister, Julia, were involved in a horrific car accident. While Lily lost her parents that day, Julia, who was only 4 years old, miraculously survived after doctors fought tirelessly to save her. However, the joy of Julia's survival was tempered by the news that she would be wheelchair-bound for life due to severe spinal injuries sustained in the crash. The aftermath of the accident left Lily reeling with grief and the overwhelming responsibility of caring for her young sister. In their time of need, their grandmother Grace stepped in, offering a haven for the 2 distraught girls. At the tender age of 14, Lily swiftly adapted to the realities of caring for a baby. She embraced the role of both sister and mother figure to Julia, learning the intricacies of childcare with a maturity far beyond her years. Their grandmother, Grace, did her best to provide for them, working tirelessly to support her granddaughters. Lily, recognizing the need to help at home, made the difficult decision to drop out of school to dedicate herself fully to Julia's care. Despite the hardships, Lily found joy and fulfillment in her life with Julia. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. When Grace eventually retired, she insisted that Lily return to school to continue her education, promising to take over the care of Julia at home. Lily excelled in her studies, standing out as an exceptional student. She was acutely aware that the future held the responsibility of caring for both Julia and her grandmother Grace, and she approached her education with this in mind. While her peers were caught up in the excitement of prom, splurging on dresses and reveling in teenage rites of passage, Lily found herself immersed in a different world. She diligently explored the vast expanse of free online courses, seizing any opportunity to expand her knowledge and skills. As high school graduation approached, the buzz among her classmates was palpable. The girls chattered excitedly about the upcoming graduation party, spending weekends hunting for the perfect dresses. Others were busy scouring college and university websites, dreaming of their future academic endeavors. For Lily, however, such luxuries were out of reach. The financial constraints of her family meant that attending college, or even purchasing a dress for the graduation, was simply unfeasible. More importantly, she couldn't imagine leaving her grandmother and Julia without her support. Her path was clear. She needed to find a job immediately after graduation. Finding her first job was a challenge for Lily, given her lack of specific professional skills and limited network of acquaintances. Eventually, she landed a position at the warehouse of a retail store. The job was physically demanding, requiring her to stack various packages onto their designated shelves. Despite the challenges, the pay was decent, enough to cover their household expenses. What Lily particularly appreciated about this job was its schedule. It began at 9 a.m., and often she could leave as soon as she finished her tasks, which was usually around 3 p.m. This allowed her to return home early, where she would help her grandmother with cooking dinner and attend to other household chores. On the days when the warehouse job wasn't as demanding, Lily cherished the extra hours she could spend with Julia. She turned these moments into opportunities for her sister's education and growth. Lily would stop by the local library on her way home, her backpack often bulging with an eclectic mix of books, from illustrated children's stories to basic science and math workbooks. At home, she and Julia would settle in their cozy living room, a space filled with warmth and the soft hum of everyday life. There, Lily would patiently read aloud, her voice animating the characters and bringing the stories to life. Julia, with her eyes wide with wonder, would listen intently, her imagination ignited by the tales of adventure, magic, and far-off lands. But it wasn't just about storytelling. Lily also guided Julia through the exercise books, explaining basic concepts in a way that made them easy to understand. She created little games and quizzes to make learning fun and engaging for Julia, who, despite her physical limitations, showed a keen interest and a quick mind. These sessions were more than educational. They were a testament to the sisters' unbreakable bond. For Lily, these moments were precious, a chance to give Julia the childhood experiences she deserved. For Julia, these were times of joy and discovery, a chance to see the world beyond the confines of her limitations, through the eyes of her beloved sister. Lily couldn't help but feel a pang of envy and self-consciousness when she heard her friends talk about their college experiences. They shared stories of making new friends, attending classes, and the general excitement of campus life. Listening to them, she often felt a sense of embarrassment, acutely aware of how different her path was compared to theirs. While they were navigating the adventures of higher education, Lily was juggling work and family responsibilities, seemingly worlds apart from the typical young adult experience. At 12 years old, Julia had become quite tech-savvy, spending her free time exploring the digital world from her computer at home. One day, she noticed that Lily seemed unusually downcast. Concerned, Julia asked what was wrong. Lily confided in her sister, sharing her fears of being stuck in physically demanding jobs indefinitely. She longed for something more, a career that was not just a job, but a profession she could own and be proud of. That's when Julia, with a spark of inspiration, introduced Lily to a website that taught programming in an unconventional way. "It's like learning through playing games," Julia explained with an enthusiastic smile. The website was designed to make programming accessible and fun, a concept that immediately intrigued Lily. Curious, Lily sat down at the computer and tried out the programming game. The interactive challenges, cleverly disguised as games, captivated her. It was a perfect blend of learning and entertainment, and before she knew it, Lily was hooked. From that day forward, Lily's free time transformed. She was often found in front of the computer, deeply engrossed in solving programming tasks presented by the game. Her dedication paid off quickly. Within several months, she had grasped the basics of programming. This newfound skill and passion led her to discover a free online course, which she eagerly enrolled in to further her knowledge. For 2 years, Lily's routine remained unchanged. She worked diligently at the warehouse, a job that, while physically demanding, provided stability for her and her family. Each evening, after returning home, she would quickly shift gears, cooking, attending to household chores, and then dedicating herself to her programming studies. It was a grueling schedule, but Lily managed it with unwavering determination. The warehouse business began to grow, leading to an increase in the workload. The job now frequently involved handling and lifting heavy boxes. One fateful day, as Lily reached to place a box on a high shelf, she felt a sharp, excruciating pain in her back. The box fell to the ground as she clutched her spine, the pain overwhelming her. Concerned about the injury, Lily underwent an MRI. The results, however, brought distressing news. The doctors informed her that one of the discs in her spine had cracked, likely due to the repetitive strain of lifting heavy objects. They advised her that for the next few years, she must avoid lifting anything heavier than 22 pounds to prevent further damage. This development was a significant setback for Lily. Not only did it impact her ability to work at the warehouse, but it also posed new challenges in her day-to-day life. She found herself facing the harsh reality of her physical limitations, a situation that mirrored her sister's in a way she never expected. Lily found herself at a crossroads. Her recent injury meant that jobs involving heavy lifting were no longer an option. While house cleaning positions were less physically demanding, such opportunities were scarce in her small town. At the same time, Lily had honed her programming skills considerably. She knew that some 8-hour drive away, in the nearest city, there might be opportunities for her in the tech industry. Yet the thought of leaving her sister and grandmother behind was unbearable. She was torn, caught in an internal struggle, unsure of which path to take. Grace, ever perceptive, noticed Lily's dilemma. One evening, after Lily returned from a contemplative walk, she was greeted by an unexpected but heartwarming sight. Grace and Julia had set the dinner table neatly, adorning it with fresh fruits and a homemade meal, filling the room with inviting aromas. They greeted her with warm smiles, beckoning her to join them. As they settled down for dinner, Grace broke the silence. "Lily, I want you to know how much I love you," she began, her voice filled with emotion. "I've watched you grow and mature into a remarkable young woman. You've shouldered so much, more than anyone your age should." Julia, who had been listening intently, maneuvered her wheelchair closer to Lily. She reached out, giving her sister a gentle hug. "I love you so much, Lily," she said softly. "You've worked tirelessly to take care of us, and I can't tell you how much I respect and appreciate everything you've done." This moment had been carefully planned by Grace and Julia. They knew Lily was wrestling with a tough decision, and they wanted her to feel their love and support, hoping it would give her the strength to make the choice that was best for her future. Lily sat at the dinner table, a mix of confusion and surprise on her face. "Why all the formality tonight?" she asked, looking from Grace to Julia. It was then that Grace took a deep breath and shared their decision. "We've been talking, Lily, and we want to bless your journey. It's time for you to go to the city and find your future," she said gently. "Don't worry about us. We'll manage." The words hit Lily like a wave. Tears welled up in her eyes as the reality of their words sank in. She was overwhelmed by their support and sacrifice. "But I can't just leave you two," she stammered, her voice choked with emotion. Julia, with a reassuring smile, added, You don't have to carry all this burden alone. We'll be okay. You need to think about your future, too. Lily made a heartfelt promise that night. She vowed to find a job in the city and do everything in her power to one day bring them there with her. The following morning, as Lily rolled her suitcase to the door, she noticed Grace in the backyard. Her grandmother was carefully picking flowers, assembling them into a beautiful bouquet. Seeing Lily, Grace approached with a tender smile, handing her the bouquet and planting a loving kiss on her forehead. In her other hand, she held an envelope, her savings, which she insisted Lily take. "For your new start," she said softly. "Good luck, my dear." Upon arriving in the bustling city, Lily found a modest room in a humble neighborhood. It was a stark contrast to her small town, but she was determined to make it her new home. With a mix of excitement and nervousness, she sat down at her small desk, her laptop open in front of her, and began to craft her resume. Lily poured her heart into that document, detailing her self-taught programming skills, her work ethic, and her determination to succeed. She was hopeful, yet she couldn't help but feel a bit daunted by the city's competitive job market. As she browsed through job listings, she saw positions being filled almost as quickly as they were posted. Her optimism was certainly tested during this period, as the reality of the challenging job hunt in a big city began to set in. Lily's struggle in the face of educational barriers is a compelling aspect of her journey. The most significant hurdle Lily faced was her lack of formal higher education. In her small town, her self-taught skills and strong work ethic had been enough, but the city's job market was far less forgiving. Each company she applied to seemed to zero in on the same gap in her resume, her educational background. During interviews, when Lily explained that she was self-taught, having learned programming through free online courses, she often encountered skepticism. "We've seen a lot of self-taught candidates," they'd say, with a dismissive shrug. "They often lack the depth of knowledge we need." These responses were disheartening, chipping away at her confidence. A month passed in this way, with Lily sending out her resume to countless companies and attending several interviews. Yet the result was always the same: rejection. It seemed no one was willing to take a chance on a girl who had come from a small town, new to both the city and the industry, with no formal college education. Just as Lily was nearing the point of resigning to her fate and considering a return to her village, a glimmer of hope appeared. She stumbled upon an advertisement from a company openly seeking beginners for a programming position. Her spirits immediately lifted. This could be her chance, she thought. Fueled by a mix of desperation and hope, she quickly made her way to the company's address, her mind racing with all the things she would say to convince them she was more than just a beginner. Upon reaching the building, her brisk steps came to a halt as she was greeted by an elderly security guard in uniform. He looked at her with a mix of sympathy and resignation. As Lily attempted to step past him, he spoke up. "They've already hired someone, kiddo. You're the 7th person to come by. I'm really sorry." Lily paused, confusion washing over her. "Excuse me?" she asked, her heart sinking. The guard nodded solemnly. "For the job, right? They just filled the position. Told me to not let anyone else in for interviews." Lily felt her heart plummet. She was too late. The weight of disappointment pressed down on her as she trudged towards the exit, her steps heavy with defeat. Just as she was about to step through the door, the old security guard called out to her. "Hey, kid, they're looking for a janitor. Would you consider that?" She paused and offered a weary smile. "No, thank you," she replied politely, her voice tinged with resignation. The old man nodded understandingly. "Well, all right then. Good luck to you, kid." Lily took a few steps forward, but then something shifted within her. A slow smile began to spread across her face. She turned back to the security guard, her smile now beaming with a newfound realization. She briskly walked back to him and extended her hand in a firm handshake. "You, sir, are a blessing," Lily said, her eyes sparkling with gratitude. "I'm Lily, by the way." The old man, now identified as Peter Holland, looked back at her, his brows knitted in confusion. He couldn't fathom what had suddenly made her so happy. "I'm Peter Holland," he replied, his tone laced with curiosity. Realizing the opportunity that lay before her, Lily felt a wave of gratitude towards the old security guard. She engaged him in conversation, asking if he had mentioned the janitorial position to the other candidates who had come for the programming job. Peter shook his head. "Honestly, I didn't even think of it until I saw you," he admitted. Feeling a surge of warmth towards this kind stranger, Lily asked, "Would it be okay if I gave you a hug?" With a gentle nod from Peter, they shared a brief, heartfelt embrace. Lily stepped back, her face lit up with hope. She recognized that even a janitorial position in the company could be a stepping stone. It would give her a chance to be on the inside, to meet people, and perhaps, in time, demonstrate her programming skills. In her mind, it was a brilliant strategy, a foot in the door to the world she longed to be a part of. Yet, as she contemplated this new plan, Lily couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. She was stepping into uncharted territory, unaware of the challenges and opportunities that awaited her in this new role. Finley, the owner of the mid-sized firm, conducted Lily's interview personally. He believed in meeting each of his employees, a testament to his hands-on approach in his business. Finley was an imposing figure, both in personality and appearance. A stout, tall man with a demeanor that somehow combined authority and kindness, he often reminded people of a bear, formidable yet approachable. During the interview, Finley inquired about Lily's experience in similar roles. She answered honestly, explaining that while this would be her first job as a janitor, her time at the warehouse had familiarized her with the rigors of physical labor. Finley seemed to appreciate her straightforwardness and the confident way she presented herself. As the interview drew to a close, Lily toyed with the idea of mentioning her programming skills. However, she hesitated, fearing it might give the impression that she wasn't genuinely interested in the janitorial position. She decided against it, choosing to focus on securing the job at hand. When Finley offered her the position, Lily accepted with a sense of relief and gratitude. The past month had been tough, with her savings gradually depleting. Now, with this job, even though it was as a janitor, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. It was a start, a foothold in a company where she could potentially explore her passion for programming in the future. Finley, with his easygoing demeanor, steered the conversation into more casual territory. He asked Lily about her hometown, showing genuine interest. Lily, cautious about revealing too much of her personal life, gave him a general overview. To her surprise, Finley was familiar with the town. He shared a fond memory of fishing there with his son, adding a personal touch to their conversation. Their chat was interrupted when the door cracked open. Lily glanced over to see a woman peering in. Their eyes met, and Lily immediately felt a prick of discomfort under the woman's scrutinizing gaze. "Mr. Powell, should I set the meeting with Intera for the 25th? The woman asked, her tone professional. "Yes, that works. Thanks, Sandra," Finley replied without missing a beat. The woman, Sandra, who Lily would later learn was Finley's secretary, seemed slightly flustered. "I'm sorry for interrupting. I didn't realize you were in an interview. She must have walked past my desk when I was away," she said, a hint of apology in her voice. Finley waved it off. "It's fine, Sandra. This is Lily, our new janitor," he introduced her, turning towards Lily with a smile. Sandra's expression shifted subtly when she looked at Lily. There was a flash of something, irritation perhaps, that she quickly masked. Lily couldn't be sure, but she sensed that Sandra wasn't thrilled about her presence. It seemed Sandra had interrupted them under the pretense of confirming a meeting date, perhaps spurred by curiosity upon hearing laughter from Finley's office. And now, Seeing Lily, young and attractive, her annoyance seemed to deepen. Lily quickly sensed that Sandra had taken an instant disliking to her, seemingly determined to make her feel unwelcome in the new environment. As Lily stepped out of Finlay's office, she was greeted by Sandra's raised eyebrow and crossed arms, an unspoken signal of the secretary's disdain. "Come with me. I'll show you around," Sandra said, her voice tinged with forced politeness. Lily followed, trying to maintain a sense of professionalism despite the chilly reception. As they walked through the office, Sandra rattled off information about Lily's janitorial duties. Her tone was patronizing, each word laced with arrogance, as if to underline the disparity between their positions. Lily listened quietly, nodding where appropriate, but she couldn't help feeling the sting of Sandra's attitude. It was clear that Sandra saw her as an intruder, an unwelcome addition to the office. Despite this, Lily resolved to stay focused on her goals. She reminded herself that this job was a stepping stone, a means to an end. She wouldn't let Sandra's behavior deter her from her path. Lily quickly settled into her role at the office, adopting a strategy to be as efficient and unobtrusive as possible. She worked swiftly and quietly, ensuring that her presence didn't disrupt the flow of the workplace. After completing her tasks, she found a quiet corner in the hall where she could immerse herself in her studies or lose herself in a book. Whenever there was a coffee spill in the hallway or a mess in the kitchen, she promptly attended to it with a quiet efficiency. Her approach didn't go unnoticed. Colleagues began to remark on how the office always seemed to be spotlessly clean, yet they rarely saw Lily at work. There was a growing sense of appreciation and curiosity about how she managed to keep everything in such pristine condition without drawing attention to herself. Finlay, in particular, was impressed with Lily's work. He noticed her dedication and her tendency to keep to herself. On several occasions, he saw her sitting quietly in a secluded corner of the office, absorbed in a book. Each time, he couldn't help but smile in approval before continuing on his way. Lily's discreet presence and her commitment to her job were exactly what he valued in an employee. Sandra seemed to relish in making Lily's work life-challenging. She frequently devised petty ways to cause trouble for her, adding an unnecessary layer of stress to Lily's daily routine. Despite this, Lily tried her best to stay focused and not let Sandra's behavior affect her. Outside their office building, there was a high-end clothing store that often caught Lily's eye. She would occasionally pause in front of the store, captivated by a particular dress displayed in the window. It was a beautiful piece, navy blue in color, with a unique design that was short in the front to reveal the knees and elegantly long in the back. Lily couldn't help but dream about wearing such a dress. She remembered her high school graduation, a time when even a simple dress was a luxury she couldn't afford. Now, standing in front of the window, she allowed herself a moment of escapism, imagining how she would look and feel in that dress, walking confidently as people turned to admire her. However, each time she peered at the price tag, reality came crashing back. The dress cost as much as her monthly rent and living expenses combined. The disparity between her aspirations and her financial constraints was a stark reminder of the challenges she still faced. Caught in her daydreams, Lily didn't notice Sandra approaching with a group of colleagues until it was too late. They appeared to be heading out for lunch when Sandra, ever eager to belittle Lily, seized the opportunity. "Well, well, well. Look who's dreaming about a Versace dress. Keep walking, honey. It's way out of your league," Sandra sneered, her words dripping with condescension. A few of Sandra's companions forced out awkward chuckles, more out of obligation than amusement. They knew Sandra held considerable sway over Finlay's decisions in the office. Aligning with her, despite her mean-spirited nature, was a tactic they used to secure their own positions. Sandra's constant jibes were precisely why Lily had adjusted her schedule to come in early and leave as soon as her work was done. This change in routine led to her spending more time with Mr. Holland, the security guard. Their early morning chats had blossomed into a genuine friendship, offering Lily a much-needed respite from the unpleasantness she faced from Sandra. Finley was not oblivious to Sandra's behavior. He had noticed her condescending attitude and had cautioned her to tone it down on multiple occasions. However, he continued to employ her because, despite her arrogance, she was competent in her role. Finley valued efficiency and effectiveness in his employees, but he also cared about maintaining a positive work environment. Known for being a considerate boss, Finley often organized team-building activities. With the arrival of spring, he planned a picnic in the nearby woods. The announcement, made during a company meeting one morning, was met with enthusiastic applause. The team was excited about the opportunity to bond outside of the office. Lily, finishing her cleaning duties, heard the roar of excitement from the conference room. She couldn't help but smile at the sense of camaraderie within the company. She assumed she wasn't included in these company events, given her position, and continued with her work. However, Finley, ever the inclusive leader, noticed Lily's absence in the meeting. He peered through the conference room's blurry window, spotting her silhouette in the hall. Excusing himself from the still buzzing crowd, he stepped out to speak with her. "Lily, you're invited too. You're part of our company, just like everybody else," he said, his smile genuine and warm. Lily felt a blush rise to her cheeks at Finley's personal invitation. "Am I really?" "Oh, thank you so much," she responded, her voice tinged with surprise and gratitude. It meant a lot to her that Finley considered her an integral part of the team, despite her role as a janitor. Lily sat quietly in the lunch area, her sandwich half-eaten, her thoughts elsewhere. Mr. Holland, ever observant, noticed her unusual demeanor. He approached her with a concerned look. "Are you all right, kiddo? You seem a bit down today," he inquired, his voice gentle. Lily offered a small, distracted smile. "Oh, it's nothing major, Mr. Holland. I was invited to a team-building event with everyone from the office," she shared, trying to sound more upbeat than she felt. "That sounds wonderful. Isn't it good to feel included?" Mr. Holland replied, encouragingly. Lily sighed, a hint of reluctance in her voice. "I thought so too, at first, but Sandra will be there. She always finds a way to make things difficult for me. I'm worried she won't let me enjoy the event." Mr. Holland nodded understandingly. "Listen, Lily, you're giving her too much power over your happiness. Don't let her presence stop you from having a good time. Go there, enjoy the nature, walk along the stream, breathe in the fresh air. Just relax and be yourself. You deserve to enjoy this event as much as anyone else." That day, all the colleagues were gathering at the office, sharing jokes and laughter, eagerly waiting for everyone to arrive so they could start their journey. In a surprising turn of events, Sandra didn't tease Lily, her usual target. Instead, she occasionally cast malicious glances at Lily and whispered to her office girlfriends. Amidst this, Lily found a peaceful spot on the lawn and basked in the sun. Before long, Finley's car turned the corner and came into view. He parked and stepped out, not alone, but accompanied by a little boy around 3 years old. The sight of the child caught Lily's attention, who observed the boy being left under Sandra's care while Finley briefly returned to the office. Sandra, caught up in conversation with her friends, seemed to forget about the child, who began wandering towards the lawn. Suddenly, a stray dog, intently searching under a tree, caught the boy's attention. The boy, delighted, shouted, "Dog!" and ran towards it without a hint of fear. The situation escalated rapidly. The dog, startled and growling menacingly, lunged at the boy. In an instant, Lily was at the boy's side, scooping him up in her arms. The dog, angered by the interference, viciously bit Lily's leg. Despite the pain, she held tightly to the child. The dog, persistent and aggressive, leaped up in an attempt to bite her arm and knock her down. Lily, amidst this chouse, could only scream for the dog to get away. As the commotion unfolded, men from their office, along with Finley, dashed towards the scene. The dog, sensing the imminent danger from the approaching group, decided to make a hasty retreat. Tail tucked, it scampered away, leaving Lily alone with the child. Finley, having reached Lily and his son Travis, wrapped them in a grateful embrace. "Thank you, Lily. Thank you for saving my boy. I can't express my gratitude enough. You're all covered in blood. I need to take you to the hospital right now." Lily, still in shock from the ordeal and not fully grasping her condition, brushed off his concern. "No, I'm fine. It's just a scratch." "You're going to get yourself bloody," she replied, underestimating the severity of her injury. Finley, understanding the gravity of the situation better than Lily in her shocked state, insisted firmly, "Lily, quickly, get in the car." He cast aside any formalities in his urgency. The day, which had begun with laughter and anticipation, took an unexpected turn. Finley, Travis, and Lily ended up going to the hospital. Meanwhile, their colleagues, witnessing the alarming events, collectively decided against proceeding with their planned activities. They felt that continuing with their original plans for fun and relaxation would be incredibly insensitive given what had just transpired. Sandra, ever the antagonist, attempted to trivialize Lily's courageous act. She suggested that they shouldn't let Lily's injury disrupt their plans for fun. This time, however, her comments were met with visible disgust from most of her colleagues. "What? Just because she's hurt, we all have to suffer too? It's not like we can do anything for her." "That's the doctor's job," Sandra complained, her voice tinged with bitterness. The group slowly dispersed, many shaking their heads at her lack of empathy. Lily's injuries from the dog attack were more serious than she had initially thought. She had to endure stitches for the wounds on her arms and legs, along with a series of painful injections. While she was in the hospital, Finley and his son, Travis, visited her regularly, offering their support and company. One day, shortly before Lily was due to be discharged, Finley arrived with a special gift. He presented her with a beautifully wrapped box, bearing the company's logo. "Lily, Travis and I wanted to give you this small token of our admiration for your bravery," he said warmly. Upon opening the package, Lily was so moved that she burst into tears. Inside was something she never expected. "What's wrong, Lily?" Finley asked, looking concerned. She was at a loss for words. "It's just, I'm overwhelmed. I'm just a cleaner, and I don't know where I'd ever wear this," she managed to say through her tears. Travis, with the innocence of a child, came over and hugged her, saying, "Don't cry, you can wear it to preschool." His comment brought a chuckle from Lily, lightening the mood. "There you go, you can wear it to preschool," Finley joined in with a laugh. Upon her return to work, Lily was greeted with a challenging situation. Sandra had called in sick with the flu, leaving Finley without a secretary on a particularly busy day filled with important meetings. Finley attempted to call another temporary substitute, but she too was unavailable due to illness. The office was abuzz with the news of the flu outbreak, leaving several staff members out of commission, including Sandra. Finley, preoccupied with the day's important negotiations, was pondering his next move when he saw Lily, vacuum in hand, diligently attending to her cleaning duties. "Lily, put that down. I need your help," he called out, a sense of urgency in his voice. Surprised, Lily stopped and looked at him questioningly. "Do you need me to clean another area?" she asked, ready to oblige. "No, I need you to fill in for Sandra during today's negotiations," Finley explained, noticing her startled expression. Lily was taken aback. "But I don't know anything about being a secretary." "Don't worry, it's straightforward. Just assist with the paperwork as needed. It's a lot simpler than what you're used to," Finley reassured her, a hint of confidence in his voice. He then glanced at her attire. "After a quick briefing, my driver will take you home to change. That blue dress will be perfect for the occasion." Nervously agreeing to help, Lily requested, "Please don't be upset if I make a mistake." At home, after freshening up and doing her hair, Lily slipped into the blue dress. She approached the mirror and was taken aback by her reflection. The transformation was astonishing. She hardly recognized herself. Back at the office, Finley paced nervously, awaiting Lily's return and the arrival of the representatives for the crucial meeting. When Lily entered, confidently announcing her presence, Finley turned and was momentarily speechless. Before him stood not just his diligent janitor, but a poised, elegant woman. As the meeting commenced, Lily remained quiet, observing and listening. It was her first time in such a formal setting, but she quickly realized that the discussions were straightforward. As she followed the conversation, Lily found that she understood more than she expected. As the meeting neared its conclusion, with both parties poised to sign the contract, Lily's sharp eye caught a crucial oversight. Quickly, she scribbled a note and discreetly passed it to Finley. He glanced at it, his expression shifting from surprise to realization. Lily had pinpointed a significant detail that he had missed. With a subtle nod of thanks to her, he smoothly raised the point with the partners, seamlessly integrating it into the final discussions. After the meeting, Finley returned to the conference room, a look of admiration on his face. "Lily, that was incredible. How did you catch that?" he asked, genuinely impressed. Lily shrugged modestly. "I just noticed you hadn't mentioned it and thought it was important. I was worried you might overlook it in the final moments," she explained, her smile reflecting her relief at having been helpful. Finley was thankful and suddenly asked her to dinner as a thank you. As they left the meeting room, Sandra showed up, out of breath. Seeing Lily in her fancy blue dress looking amazing made her very jealous. She was shocked that the meeting had ended and Lily was there. Feeling upset, she turned and walked away, fast. Lily felt uneasy. She sensed that something might be happening between Finley and Sandra. During the drive, Lily inquired about Travis, surprising Finley with her thoughtfulness. They agreed to pick up Travis, making it a more casual and friendly outing. The dinner at a quiet, cozy restaurant was pleasant. Finley was curious about Lily's life, and she opened up about her past, her dreams of bringing her grandmother and sister to the city, and her aspirations. As the evening wore on, she revealed that her initial intention wasn't to work as a janitor, but to find a pathway into programming. Finley listened intently, deeply moved by her determination and resilience. As he drove her home, he couldn't shake a peculiar feeling that had settled in his heart. Her strength, her ambition, her kindness, all of it made him see Lily in a new light. Was he developing feelings for her? The thought both surprised and intrigued him. Lily's days continued as usual, but with a newfound sense of respect from her colleagues. Her act of bravery and the revelation of her personal story had earned her admiration. However, she couldn't bring herself to ask Finley for a different role within the company, feeling somewhat embarrassed about her true aspirations being known. One morning, Lily arrived at work to find an unusual change. Mr. Holland, the constant presence in the office, was nowhere to be seen. His absence was odd and unsettling. Her sense of unease grew when she discovered that the combination to her locker had been changed. Puzzled, Lily headed towards the hall, seeking answers. There, she saw a man she didn't recognize, dressed in a uniform similar to hers, mopping the floor with her mop. Assuming that the company had hired additional janitorial staff in anticipation of the office expansion, she approached him. "Excuse me, sir, do you know why the locker combinations were changed?" she inquired, trying to hide her confusion. The man paused his mopping and looked up, a look of surprise on his face. "Change the lock combinations? No idea. They just gave me the code for this locker. And who are you?" he asked, slightly perplexed. Lily, trying to maintain her composure, introduced herself. "I'm Lily. another janitor here. Could you open the locker for me, please?" He obliged, but when they opened it, the locker was empty. Lily's confusion deepened. Her locker had always been a small sanctuary for her personal items during work hours. The emptiness of it now felt like an ominous sign, and she couldn't help but wonder what was happening. As the office filled with people, Lily's eyes searched for Finley, but there was no sign of him. She inquired with her colleagues, but no one seemed to know his whereabouts. Feeling a bit lost, she decided to head home, planning to return the next day. The following morning, Lily allowed herself a bit more sleep, knowing that the new janitor would be there to cover her duties. However, her rest was interrupted by a knock at the door. Groggy and surprised, she opened it to find Finley standing there, a bouquet of wildflowers in hand and a warm smile on his face. "Good morning, sunshine," he greeted cheerfully. Blinking away her sleepiness, Lily managed a smile full of questions. Finley gestured for her to step outside. As she did, the sight before her took her breath away. There was her sister, Julia, sitting in her wheelchair, her laughter like music in the air. A few feet away, her grandmother Grace was engaged in a lively chat with Mr. Holland, who offered his arm for her to lean on gracefully. Lily was overwhelmed, her heart swelling with emotion. It felt surreal, like a dream woven from her deepest desires. "You deserve this, Lily. Your strength and resilience are inspiring," Finley said, his voice filled with admiration. It emerged that Mr. Holland had been a confidant not just to Lily, but to Finley as well. Like a father figure, Mr. Holland had provided wisdom and guidance to Finley over the years. When Finley had sought Mr. Holland's advice about Lily, the old security guard had smiled knowingly. "The first time I saw Lily, I knew she was meant to play a significant role in your life, Finley," he had said. This revelation shed light on why Mr. Holland had specifically mentioned the janitorial job to Lily. Inspired by Mr. Holland's insights and Lily's story, Finley had made the decision to personally drive to her hometown to bring her grandmother and sister to the city. And for the challenging task of convincing Lily's grandmother, who better to rely on than the persuasive Mr. Holland? Tears of joy and disbelief brimmed in Lily's eyes as she embraced her grandmother and Julia. The reunion was filled with laughter, tears, and stories, bridging the distance that had separated them for so long. Finley organized a dinner at a quaint restaurant in the city, making sure to include everyone in the celebration. On their way, they picked up Travis from preschool. The young boy, with his infectious energy, immediately gravitated towards Lily, choosing to sit on her lap. Lily exchanged a meaningful glance with Finley, their eyes locking in a moment of shared affection and understanding. Lily, having cared for Julia since she was a child herself, had a natural warmth and affection for children. Travis seemed to sense this, comfortably nestling in her embrace, reluctant to move. As they drove to the restaurant, Lily gazed at her grandmother and Julia, her heart swelling with gratitude. The rapid changes in her life, the kindness she had encountered in Finley and Mr. Holland, filled her with a profound sense of thankfulness. At the restaurant, as they were enjoying their meals and moving on to desserts, Finley stood up to make an announcement. He addressed Lily's desire to be with her family and made a generous offer. "I have a country house about half an hour from the city. It's yours if you want your family to move in," he proposed. Lily was overwhelmed by the offer, feeling a mix of gratitude and discomfort at such generosity. But Finley was insistent, his voice filled with sincerity. "Lily, you've earned this and more. It's not just about you saving Travis, it's about who you are. The strength and love you've shown for your family is extraordinary. They deserve to be close to you," he said, his eyes conveying deep respect and admiration. Lily expressed her gratitude to Finley, insisting on paying rent once she started earning a regular salary. However, she would soon learn that Finley had no intention of accepting any rent from her. As time passed, the professional meetings between Lily and Finley gradually evolved into something more personal, blossoming into dates. They found joy in each other's company, often including little Travis in their outings for picnics and outdoor adventures. During these moments, Lily experienced a comforting warmth in her heart, a sense of belonging and happiness that was new to her. One day, while Lily was working at her computer, Finley entered her room with a sense of urgency. "Lily, I'm not usually this forward, but I can't hold back anymore. I love you and I want to be with you," he confessed. Lily's face lit up with a genuine smile. "I'm not much for grand romantic gestures either. I love you too, Finley. I want to be with you as well," she responded warmly. Lily, who had once focused solely on her family and survival, now found herself with everything she had ever dreamed of: a fulfilling job, a loving partner in Finley, and a joyful connection with Travis, who was like a son to her. In a delightful twist, Mr. Holland, who had been a constant support in Lily's life, found a new chapter in his own story. He retired from his job to spend more time with Grace, Lily's grandmother. Their bond grew strong, rooted in shared interests and companionship. Julia thrived in a school for special needs children, making remarkable progress and finding joy in her new environment. One peaceful evening, as Lily sat on the porch lost in thought, Julia wheeled up to her and embraced her silently. Overwhelmed with emotion, Lily felt tears well up in her eyes. She reflected on her journey, filled with trials and triumphs, and wondered what her parents would think if they could see her now. She hoped they would be as proud of her as she was of herself and her family.
Grandma, what am I gonna do now? Everything's gonna be alright, sweetheart. It won't happen fast, but I believe in you. You can do it. Those were some final words Grandmother said before passing away. Melissa was sad and tears were falling down her face as she looked at her grandma. God had taken her. Melissa and her grandma had been living together since Melissa was born. Melissa didn't know her parents and never asked her grandma about them because she didn't want to make her grandma sad. Melissa also thought that her grandma didn't want to talk about her parents. Melissa always felt like her parents left her behind, maybe because they had different priorities in life. Melissa's grandmother had many visitors, both nice and not so nice. Whenever they came to visit, Melissa would stay in her room and wait for them to leave. She understood that she couldn't interrupt them because her grandmother was helping them. As time went by, Melissa grew older, and when she turned 12, she began to comprehend the world a little more. She realized that the world was different from what she had thought. Melissa believed that her grandmother knew many things that other people didn't know. As she grew older, she also began to understand those things, and it scared her. Melissa would sometimes cry in her room because of what she was seeing and comprehending. Melissa was crying again in her room when her grandma heard her. She came to her room quietly and asked if she was okay before entering. Melissa said yes and allowed her grandma to come in. "Hey, sweetie, what's wrong? I've been hearing you cry more often lately. Are you okay, darling?" "I'm scared, Grandma." "What are you scared of, honey?" Grandma asked. Melissa shared everything with her grandma, and her grandma gave her a tight hug. "Melissa, my dear, I've always been afraid that this would happen, and you would inherit my gift, but I suppose it was meant to be," her grandma said. After her grandmother passed away, Melissa was at a loss about what to do next. She was only 15 and thought that she would be sent to an orphanage and then to a foster home. Melissa didn't want that to happen, so she decided to run away and hide somewhere far away. She didn't really understand why she had made that decision, but she thought she could make it work somehow. Mr. Wesley Harris gave his daughter a kiss on the forehead and said he would try to come home earlier. Chelsea let out a sigh and said it was okay. "Dad, you don't have to feel guilty about being at work all the time. I'll be okay. Go ahead," Chelsea reassured her father. "We could do a movie night tonight. Do you want to pick something fun?" Wesley asked, trying to cheer her up. "It's okay, Dad. Don't worry. I'll be fine." "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something," Chelsea added. "What is it, sweetheart?" Mr. Harris asked. "Do you think we can try to find someone?" "Honey, are you sure?" her father asked with concern. Chelsea didn't want her father to hire a caregiver who would only provide routine medical treatments and treat her like a baby. Instead, she wanted someone who can just talk with her. She also asked not to consider the agencies. What's up with the nurses from the agencies? Dad, they're not real. They're like machines, They act according to all the rules and instructions. I'm not connecting with them. They're just cold. Wesley kissed his daughter once again and said he will try to figure something out. Wesley was going to work and thinking that life is really weird. About 5 years ago, he had a family that was very happy. But now, his wife passed away in a car accident and his daughter is very sick and can't get out of bed. Wesley's spending a lot of money on her medicine, but her health is getting worse every day. The doctors are not optimistic about her condition and are saying that her illness is getting worse. At first, it wasn't so frightening. Chelsea received treatment and was living like any other child. She still needed to take medicine, but nobody was aware of it. At some point, everything changed for the worse. Chelsea began losing weight quickly and became very feeble. It's been a year and she barely leaves her bed. Sometimes she can sit up by leaning on soft pillows. Recently, she has been experiencing more pain. Every time Wesley saw his daughter in pain, his heart ached. He felt helpless and had been struggling to deal with it. Although doctors have prescribed some painkillers, they didn't seem to last long, and Chelsea was becoming more tolerant to stronger painkillers. Wesley pulled up to the parking lot outside of his office. Mr. Harris, do you think I could go earlier today? My wife is getting discharged from the maternity ward today. Wesley's driver was looking at him through the rear view mirror. Oh wow, congratulations. Yeah, sure, go right ahead. Let me know if you need anything. All good, sir. Thanks. You can leave the keys and take a day off tomorrow if you need. Oh, can I? I appreciate it, Mr. Harris. So, is it a boy? Girl? It's a girl. We named her Melissa. Wesley smiled and said it was a beautiful name. Alright, have fun and congratulations once again. Wesley got out of the car and went to his office. Everything around was busy and full of life. People were getting married and having children, either letting happiness in or the opposite. However, at his home, everything was dull and dreary. Everyone was silently waiting for what would happen next. The most difficult aspect of everything Wesley was going through was to remain strong and not to crumble. He did his best to support his daughter and tried to smile as much as he could. Chelsea was an intelligent and mature person, and despite her condition, she was coping well. However, it was difficult for Wesley to see her in that state. He understood how tough it must be for his little girl to be confined to her bed and to realize that there was only one outcome with no hope for a better future. Mr. Harris, I need you to sign these papers, please. Wesley's secretary approached him. Angie, I need your help. I'm looking for someone who could spend time with my daughter. It doesn't have to be someone certified, not a robot from the agency, an actual human being. Oh, that's a tough one. Let me think. Someone who can spend time with your daughter and not from an agency. I guess you could try someone her age or, I don't know, someone who needs a place to stay maybe? Yeah, I guess we can try that. Alright, give me your papers to sign. Wesley completed his work early as he had promised Chelsea. He then decided to visit a convenience store to get some sweets for her. Even though the housekeeper and doctor had advised against any sugar, Wesley knew that a chocolate bar would make his daughter happy. He was aware that the housekeeper and doctor might get upset, but he wanted to bring a little joy to his daughter's day. As he was leaving the store, Wesley saw a girl standing outside with no particular purpose. He sensed that she was struggling with something internally. Although she didn't appear to be homeless or anything, Wesley remembered his own daughter and decided to talk to her and make sure she was okay. Excuse me, do you need any help? At first, the girl was scared, but then she smiled. She apologized and asked if she could have some spare change. She explained that she had run out of money and was feeling hungry. Wesley glanced around and noticed a nearby restaurant. There is a restaurant? Can I buy you some food? Thank you so much, sir. This is really embarrassing. No, you're fine. Don't worry. While on his way to the restaurant, Wesley was contemplating the girl's age. She appeared to be around 15-16 years old, just like his daughter. However, her eyes made her seem much more mature than her age. The girl was eating everything that Wesley had bought her. She was so famished that her eating made Wesley feel hungry too. At that instant, he realized that he could ask her to come with him to meet his daughter. "I'm sorry, I didn't even ask your name. I'm Melissa." "Melissa, where are your parents? Do you live with them?" Melissa immediately stopped. "I don't really know them. I used to live with my grandma at the trailer park. When she passed away 7 months ago, I moved to the city." "So, do you have a place to stay?" Melissa just shrugged her shoulders. "I had been staying with my grandma's old friend for 5 months. I was helping out at home, cleaning, cooking and stuff, until her children took her to their home in another city." "So you're saying you've got nowhere to go?" "I guess no." "Would you like to live in our house? I have a daughter." "Is she sick?" "How do you know?" Wesley was alarmed. Melissa saw that Wesley was confused and figured she had to say something. "Well, you looked tired, and as soon as I mentioned I was taking care of my grandma's friend, you instantly lit up. Then you said you had a daughter, and that's how I figured." "You're quite smart. How old are you?" "I'll be 16 in a week." "Do you have any papers with you?" "They're in the mall not far from here. A kind janitor let me store my things in the closet there. I help him mop the floor sometimes, and he lets me stay there." Wesley was thinking. He liked Melissa. "So, what do you think? Do you want to move in with us? I mean, please don't get me wrong. We've got a nurse and a housekeeper. It's just my daughter needs someone to talk to, that's all." "I understand. Yeah, I can do that." "You don't even know me. You just agreed to go with me. Don't worry. I know you're telling the truth." "How much do you think I should pay you?" "Sir, you don't have to pay either." Wesley thought Melissa was very innocent and genuine. They were in a car driving past the bright lights of the city, and Melissa was gazing out the window. Wesley saw this as an opportunity to discuss his daughter. "So, Melissa, let me tell you about Chelsea." "You don't really have to. If she wants to, she'll share her story with me when she's ready." Wesley agreed with a nod. He was still perplexed and curious about where Melissa had actually come from. When they got to his house, Wesley first showed Melissa her bedroom. She really liked it. "It's beautiful. I've never had a bed like that." "Make yourself at home. You can unpack while I step out for a bit." Melissa was thrilled with her own bedroom. She meticulously unpacked her belongings and arranged her clothes tidily in the closet. After finishing, Melissa silently left her room and walked into the hallway where Wesley was walking towards her. He stopped and said that it was time for her to meet Chelsea. Chelsea was sitting in her bed, looking out the window. "Hey, honey." Chelsea slowly turned around and smiled. "Hey, Dad." "Melissa, this is my daughter, Chelsea. And Chelsea, this is Melissa." Chelsea was looking at Melissa with great interest. "Nice to meet you, Melissa. She's a really nice young lady. I'm sure you will get along well and make really good friends," Wesley added. "Alright, you two go ahead and get to know each other. I'll go change." Melissa slowly walked over to Chelsea's bed and looked at her without saying anything. "Hi," she said. "Hi," Chelsea replied. Chelsea could feel that Melissa was looking deep into her soul. She had a weird feeling. Chelsea was a bit frightened and looked at Melissa, but then Melissa smiled. "Don't be scared. Everything's gonna be alright." Gradually, the awkward tension between them subsided and they started talking. By the time Wesley came back, Chelsea was laughing. As he walked in and saw them, he froze. He hadn't seen her beaming and heard this laughter for the last couple of years. Melissa was telling her how her grandma would have herbal teas every time to make her memory better. She kept losing her shiny things and thought that she was forgetting them somewhere, and it turned out a magpie was flying in and stealing them. "Are you guys having fun?" Chelsea turned to her dad and said, "We are, Dad." Wesley said that dinner will be ready in an hour. He was expecting a refusal from his daughter as usual. This time Chelsea said, "Dad, do you think we can move my bed to the kitchen? I want to eat there." Wesley was shocked. "Of course, honey, let me get the chair instead." They had purchased a special chair for her a long time ago, but Chelsea never used it. She had totally been against it. Wesley instructed the housekeeper to prepare a table for 3 people, which surprised her. However, when she noticed Chelsea chatting animatedly with another girl, she quickly got to work. Chelsea couldn't eat a lot, but she had a hearty appetite. It was peculiar and uncommon. It was the first time she ate well. For a brief moment, Wesley began to question what the doctors had told him, but he realized that doctors from 3 different countries can be wrong at the same time. Before going to bed, Melissa noticed that Chelsea was curled up in pain. Melissa, can you call the housekeeper? I need a shot. But Melissa walked up to Chelsea and put her palm on top of her head. After a minute, Chelsea began to feel that the pain was subsiding. She had never felt anything like that before. She wanted to ask how Chelsea was doing that, but she couldn't. Her eyes were drooping and she felt like she was falling asleep. Melissa stood up to shut the door and saw the housekeeper hurrying to give Chelsea a shot. Excuse me, ma'am. She's better. She fell asleep. What do you mean she's sleeping? What about the housekeeper peered inside and saw Chelsea was indeed asleep. That's impossible. 2 weeks passed and Chelsea had changed a lot. Wesley was astonished. He saw how Melissa was leading her by the hand carefully. For the first time in the last few years, Chelsea got out into the yard. Wesley couldn't believe what he was seeing, but he was still wary that it could be something temporary. Mr. Harris, where did you find this girl? The housekeeper asked. You won't believe it, but I met her on the street outside a store. Is everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine. I mean, I don't know how to say this, but she's a bit strange. She knows everything. The other day she predicted that it was going to rain in 10 minutes. She told me that my son's sore throat needs to be treated with some kind of herb. I mean, look how much Chelsea has changed. Are you telling me she's some kind of clairvoyant or something? I don't know. I don't really believe those things, but I just don't understand how. Wesley smiled, but he agreed with the housekeeper. Melissa had a piercing gaze. In the morning, Wesley was getting ready for work. Melissa walked out to him from her room. Mr. Harris, do you have to go to work today? Yes. Is everything okay? Can you stay home today, please? Why, Melissa? What's going on? I have a lot of things to do at the office. Melissa kept begging him not to go anywhere and tell his driver to stay in the city today. Wesley didn't know why he agreed to listen to her in the end. He decided he could probably work from home today. When he turned on the TV, he saw that there was a terrible accident on the highway involving a dozen cars. It happened exactly at the exit he was supposed to take, and at around the time he usually passes through that area. He immediately got a call from his driver. The driver talked for a while and thanked Mr. Harris for letting him stay in the city today. Wesley got up and headed for Melissa's room. He couldn't take it anymore. He really wanted to know who she really was. He knocked on her door, but there was no response. Then he walked towards Chelsea's room, and as he was approaching, he heard loud noises. They were arguing about something. He stood behind the slightly open door and looked through. Melissa was shouting at Chelsea. Get up now. I can't. Who told you you can't? But I'm really sick. I can't walk. I'm not supposed to walk. But you're still alive. Give me your hand. Wesley froze because Chelsea put her right foot on the floor, then the left. And then she got up. She wobbled immediately and Wesley was about to lunge, but Melissa had already had her shoulder up for her. There you go. Good job, Melissa told Chelsea. And you were telling me you were destined to be in bed. Chelsea burst out laughing. Oh my God, I'm standing. I can't believe it. Wesley quietly stepped back. He didn't care who Melissa really was. A witch, a clairvoyant, a psychic. If she could get Chelsea to walk and become healthy again, he was ready to pray for her until the day he died and take care of her like his own daughter. 3 months later, after tests, the doctors were confused. I don't know what to say, Mr. Harris. I don't think we were wrong. Only a miracle could have happened, but miracles don't happen, unfortunately. He wasn't really sure about his last words, though. Miracle did happen, and Chelsea became a healthy girl again. Melissa continued living in the family. Wesley told her he will take care of her until she decides to move on her own.
I still remember the day when everything started to unravel. Life in the countryside suited my family perfectly, but for some reason, my in-laws seemed to think of our home as an open invitation. This wasn't a hotel after all, but our space, our home. My husband, Jim, had never been a demanding person before. However, when his mother came to stay, he grew bold, even downright unreasonable. No need to bring in people who look like they can't handle their own finances, he'd mutter whenever my father visited. Jim's sneer would only get worse. If you don't like it, you can leave. I'd stay silent, pity filling me more than anger, as his words cut through the air. My father may have been between jobs, but he was far from destitute, and seeing Jim, eager to impress his mother at any cost, filled me with disgust. I decided to leave. "Fine, I'll go. But you'll have to handle everything that comes after," I replied, watching as they joyfully saw me off, thinking they'd won. My name is Anna. I'm 33 and run a real estate company, a business my father started years ago and handed over to me only recently. Although I'm the company president, I still feel new to it, as my father stepped down just 2 years ago. His retirement came as a shock. He'd been planning to work for years, but he was adamant about wanting to focus on family, saying he regretted missing out all those years. His wife, my mother, had moved back to her hometown a few years prior to help care for my grandmother. My father decided it was time for him to join her and finally put his family first. While I respected his decision, I also felt the pressure of taking on the company, wondering if I was too young for such a role. I pleaded for him to reconsider, but he was firm. "The employees trust you. You'll rise to the challenge," he assured me. So, I accepted, grateful for his confidence and ready to take on the responsibility. Around this time, I married Jim, whom I'd met through work. My father admired him, calling him capable and sincere. But my mother had her doubts, especially when she learned about Jim's close relationship with his mother, who had raised him alone after his parents' divorce. She warned me that I might end up sharing my life with her too. Although I wasn't thrilled by the idea, I was prepared to live with her if it came to that. Thankfully, Jim told me that his mother enjoyed her freedom and had a new partner, which eased my mind. After our marriage, we moved into my apartment, but after my father moved to my mother's hometown, we had the option to move into my parents' old luxury apartment. Jim was thrilled at the idea. "It's so much bigger, and we'll need the space when we have kids," he reasoned. I agreed, especially since the apartment was owned by my company, making the move seamless. Settling into the spacious apartment, I could see Jim was more than pleased. "I'm so lucky I married you," he'd say, gazing at the view. He seemed to think that I had purchased it from my father. "How much did you buy this for?" he'd ask, even suggesting that maybe my father had gifted it to us. I decided to let him believe this, hoping he'd take on some financial responsibility. Yet, he didn't contribute at all, assuming I'd cover everything since I was now the president of a successful company. One evening, my father called, asking if we were enjoying the apartment. "Does Jim appreciate it?" he teased, hinting that he'd told Jim a story about the apartment's expense. I realized then why Jim thought I'd depleted my savings to buy it. Yet, despite this impression, Jim didn't lift a finger to help with expenses, and even acted as if he owned the place. He'd bragged to people about our luxury apartment, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him we were renting it from my company. After we moved, his mother started visiting often. She loved the view, and Jim, in a moment of excitement, suggested she move in. "Your house is getting old. You'd love it here," he'd said, ignoring my shocked expression. His mother hesitated, saying, "Anna might not like that." But Jim brushed her concerns aside. I was troubled by his sudden enthusiasm for living with his mother, especially since we'd agreed that space was important in close relationships. When I voiced my concerns, he snapped, "This is my house. There's no problem if my mother lives here." The more he spoke, the more I realized he truly thought he owned this place. He hadn't reviewed the rental agreement, which I had signed under his name, and he had no idea that the apartment wasn't ours. Deciding not to correct him, I simply stated that his mother's new partner couldn't move in with us. Jim grew defensive and evasive, avoiding my questions. Our arguments increased, especially since he wouldn't help with household expenses. Distressed, I reached out to my father for advice. My father sensed my concern. "I thought you'd live together eventually, but this seems rushed. If it's necessary, I'll come to help sort things out." Around this time, my grandmother's health suddenly deteriorated, and she passed away soon after. I tried reaching Jim, but he was unresponsive and only returned my call much later, cheerful and indifferent. When he didn't attend her funeral, my parents were disappointed, and his absence left me feeling alone. After the service, I returned home to find that his mother had already moved in. "I've moved everything. Looks like I'll be staying here now," she said, beaming. Jim's reaction stunned me even more. "Your grandmother's passing was perfectly timed," he sneered. "Now Mom can live here without interruptions." His disrespect for my family was infuriating, and I had no choice but to accept that his mother was now living with us. She quickly took control, demanding I handle all household chores as if I were her servant. Whenever I'd confront Jim, he'd insist that I should be grateful to have such a supportive mother-in-law. I couldn't take it. His mother even began inviting her boyfriend, who was close to Jim's age, over to our apartment. I felt both anger and disbelief seeing a man my husband's age lounging in my home, demanding I cook for him. "Is she being deceived?" I asked Jim, but he dismissed my concerns. Yet I could tell he was uncomfortable, doubting the man's intentions. Things came to a head when my mother called, wanting to visit for a few days to honor relatives who helped with my grandmother's funeral. I had to break the news to her about Jim's mother moving in, which shocked her. "We need to address this," she said, urging my father to come along. When I told Jim of their visit, he was furious and lashed out, his mother joining in to defend him. I could feel our home becoming more of a battleground than a sanctuary. With nowhere else to turn, I moved out, taking only my essentials and settling into an empty property owned by my company. When I told my parents, my mother was outraged. "Why did you have to leave? This apartment should be yours," she insisted, unaware that the apartment was a rental. My father explained it, revealing that Jim had misunderstood our living situation from the beginning. I decided it was time to set things straight with Jim. Returning to the apartment, I showed him the rental contract. He was stunned, realizing he'd been living under a false assumption all along. His mother reacted furiously, refusing to leave. "I sold my house for this," she cried, revealing that she'd been financially supporting her boyfriend, who had now vanished, taking her money with him. It was clear that Jim and his mother had no way of affording the rent, which was substantial. Faced with this reality, I presented divorce papers to Jim, unwilling to stay in a marriage filled with lies and disrespect. Despite his reluctance, my father insisted, saying, "I thought you were a better man, but I was wrong." With my family's support, I felt lighter, finally able to step away from the chaos. As Jim and his mother left the apartment, moving into a deteriorated house, I heard that his mother's boyfriend had been arrested, though all the money she'd given him was gone. The debt they now faced was enormous, a grim consequence of their choices. Jim tried contacting me multiple times, attempting to reconcile, but I refused. I couldn't forgive the way he'd treated my family and me, and I was determined to move forward. Threatening to report him for harassment, I made it clear that he was no longer welcome in my life. Returning to live with my parents, I found a renewed sense of purpose. The painful experiences had not only strengthened my resolve, but also reminded me of the value of my family's unwavering support. Each day now is a new beginning, filled with gratitude and motivation to build a future grounded in respect and integrity.